The fight for the 2025 FIM Motocross World Championship appeared to be bulletproof. It was all put away and we knew exactly what was going to happen. Now, however, with the Grand Prix of Switzerland in the rearview mirror, what was once a complete picture now has many holes in it. In fact, it now resembles Swiss cheese to an extent, which is a lovely tie-in as we are, of course, discussing the Grand Prix of Switzerland, round 6 of the 2025 FIM Motocross World Championship. And what an event. Countless narratives, highs, lows, history all emerged from Längenfelder. So this should be a particularly spicy episode of the podcast. And I am, of course, your host, Lewis Phillips, joined by Paddock Pass podcast man and esteemed author, I should say. Established author doesn't really carry much weight. Adam Wheeler, how's it going?
Hey, Lewis. I guess you can be established. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being established. But yeah, I'm happy you got your copy of the book finally.
Right here, everyone. So,
visual promo for those who are listening rather than watching.
I may be distracted as I flick through. And if you're thinking of buying one, which Adam will now tell you where you can get one.
Well, for US market, it's actually not been released there yet. I've been asking the publishers what's going on, and it might not even appear until the early phases of 2026 due to their spring collection.
Can I not just order from Amazon?
I don't know how the publishing industry works, but I think you can probably get. I mean, it's like there's an audio version that came out a couple of days ago, and you can get it freighted over or couriered over or whatever from overseas, but then in terms of it being available in the US, it's not quite there yet, so apologies, but I hope it will be soon.
Well, and of course this is an international podcast, so everyone else can get it from their
and from Amazon or their local bookstore. You just go in there and say yes, I would like a copy of the book, then that would be great.
It's not a bad option, to be honest. But also, speaking of bad, what I was going to say, and I lost my train of thought, is thoughts on my introduction? Because you were unhappy last week.
No, it was quite good, but it was. I mean, it's been getting more and more professional each week. But I was, I haven't checked out the latest music and intro because it was still that really crappy rock and the Supercross voice.
I like
that just needs to go.
I like the music. It really gives me a bit of. I think it's our identity now, which is why I haven't changed it, because I think you hear it and you know what's coming.
It's terrible.
Okay. Well, speaking of terrible, the Grand Prix of Switzerland came under immense fire for countless reasons. But of course, there were also some extreme high points. Where do you want to start? Lucas Coenen, Ducati, Tim Gajser, the track, the venue, the state of play.
Well, can we let's praise the GP in some points? I mean, it's a very bizarre Grand Prix, isn't it? But I mean, it's one of those ones where, due to the planning and the authorization, the permits that are necessary to race in Switzerland or do any kind of activity, it's a miracle it happens at all. But it's in kind of like a split site. It can be a bit so much so, in fact, that it's a bit like Supercross, where they have two press rooms, one that's kind of located next to the circuit and another one that's a bit more traditional, where you and I would probably be based, Lewis, that is pretty much like a country mile away. It's a bit of a hike. So you have the Grand Prix split out across this site, and it's a bit ramshackle and very sort of disjointed. But the track itself is kind of changed over the years, but it is that sort of glorious old school rutty grassy soil that when it rains a lot cuts up and gets extremely rutty and rough and difficult, technical, I guess you could say. Some of the crashes we saw, really sort of took the breath away. I mean, Maxime Renault's I thought was probably worse than Tim Gajser's, but yeah, I mean, as we know, we've been there in the past. Big crowd, noisy crowd. Really loved the home riders. I mean, Jeremy Seewer, we'll talk about him in a moment, but then Arnaud Tonus also popping up. I think that might have also been the Grand Prix where Tonus took his only MXGP moto win.
Yes, I forgot about that. Yeah.
2016 or 17?
I'd say 17.
Yeah, it was after he came back from Pro Circuit Adventure and was riding a Wilvo Yamaha.
Yes, so 2017 that would have been. I was doing the
Yeah.
PR.
So, oh, there you go. Well, I mean, I mean, Swiss riders are sort of just tend to excel, in that environment. And for me, it's probably one of the few races where you have that real home Grand Prix vibe. I mean, the Swiss guys get their sort of special livery. I mean, Jeremy's always doing something in a dedicatory fashion. And they have that bizarre kind of procession of cows and cattle going through the paddock. That's where the cowbell trophy comes from. So it's got a real flavour to it. And then obviously we had quite a couple of big talking points coming from round 6.
Yeah, of course, there's going to be some negativity, but I want to start off by saying that although the circuit... Well, actually, let me start off by saying that I 100% believe that the previous edition of Frauenfeld was the better one. That track was near faultless, great racing there, and I think everyone would agree that in an ideal world we would still be using that layout, and I can't remember exactly why not. Was it built on?
I think it was just the allocation of the space, because it's
Right.
kind of in a field adjacent to a sugar factory. I mean, the paddock was all spread around the confines of this industrial landscape, and then next door you had, this field which, to be fair, they chucked a lot of mulch in it as well to try and soften up the soil and do something with it. And it had a little bit of a grandstand setting. There was crowd on like all four sides in this square kind of plot or allocation of land where the track was laid. The current guys, Lewis, I don't really know too much about it, but there were parts of it that seemed similar to the track that we saw before. But nevertheless, it's a really atmospheric round, and I think that's why they plug it on Easter weekend. So you have the strange scenario of qualifying and practice on Saturday, and then the racing itself on the Monday.
Yeah, it's not the most spectacular circuit. Watching it on TV, it doesn't scream top competition, but there is a beauty to it for all of the reasons that you mentioned, and I do enjoy the fact that it is a departure from the norm. It is a little old school. It does bring a slightly different vibe. So from that point of view, I'm not against the circuit. However, on the opposing side, it is tough to pass. It's really hard packing spots. And of course, we saw what happened to Tim, which wasn't so much a circuit fault, but more an organizer fault, because that's not exclusive to the Swiss Grand Prix. We've seen that time and time again at various venues around the world, talking about, of course, a mound of dirt that Tim hit. So shall we get straight into that? You did a nice little story on Track Off-Road with comments from a few parties, so I'll let you take the lead.
Well, first of all, I'm kind of assuming some people would have seen the social media clip of the crash.
Oh, it's
what did
gone
you make of it,
around
Lewis?
the world.
Yeah, but what percentage of blame does Gajser have for that? Because it's an unusual line, and even though he's inside the track markers that you can see, there's kind of like a ridge of grass and dirt there, and he kind of goes up that ridge. You can see the wheels out of line, and as soon as he does that, he's going to hit that little mound of dirt. Which the FIM, actually, in fairness, I really appreciate their accessibility and their openness, said that they're actually constructed to deter riders from sort of cutting across the track, as well as providing like a bit of a standing point for marshals. And I think if you see the footage of the crash, then there is actually like a more prominent mound where the marshal is not looking at the battle for the lead between Gajser and Coenen. He's actually looking elsewhere, and he's lucky he didn't get clattered by Geiser's Honda. But you still have that knuckle, that kind of I always use that word, don't I? That same sort of ball of mud that's constructed there, and it's hidden. I mean, it's tricky to see on the TV, but I guess riders say they see them on track walks all the time, so they're almost like memorizing where they are. Are they necessary? I think this is the big question, and the consensus seems to be no.
Yes, the consensus does seem to be no, but to your original point, I do think that Tim has to take some blame, not the majority, but some blame, because ultimately he was... How would you even describe it? Because he wasn't off track because he was within the markers. So the main issue here, I think, is the fact that the markers were misplaced. And the mound was somewhat on the inside of the markers. But ultimately, I do think Tim needs some blame for not backing off when he was offline.
Yeah, I think he was lining up a passing move. He'd had a couple of... Well, he was aggressively going for it, if you study sort of the footage as well, of the last sort of previous half a lap. And it's just an unorthodox line that he takes. And you have to imagine when, as a rider, as a racer, I can't speak as one, of course, but when you do that, then you are encountering a potential hazard that you haven't found on the previous lap or the previous session or whatever else.
But then, of course, the counter to that is you would anticipate that anything inside the track markers is going to be the track and okay. But then the counter again is this was second moto on Monday or Sunday in spirit, and therefore Tim should have been aware of every single inch of the circuit and where potentially there were some pitfalls. So no, to be clear, no, Tim does not deserve a majority of the blame, but there has to be some level of accountability there, I do think.
Yeah, I mean, also, don't forget, those bumps, I don't quite understand their purpose in trying to discourage riders from cutting the track. Yeah, you could say by putting it there, it's discouraging an outside line where you could rail that corner, but then why are you discouraging that? I mean, it's clearly within the track markers. If the bump was, on the outside of the yellow, you can understand it by saying, okay, if I go in there hot and wide, I've got to be really careful because I'm going to touch the marker. And then also there's this huge mound of earth that might throw me off. Even then, it just seems like an unnecessary hazard. But I mean, it was an unfortunate consequence as well that, he went to pick up the bike, you can see, and then he was kind of, after a second or two, the awareness of like the dislocation of his right shoulder clicked in. And, what happened afterwards as well was also unfortunate. I mean, sometimes I guess these things just pop straight back in. I mean, we've seen riders compete the following week or the following 2 weeks without really too much stress. I mean, I can remember Sean Simpson, I think it was in 2014 or 2015, that, one of the last Grand Prix of the season in Brazil, popped his shoulder out. I think it was on Saturday, and he raced on Sunday by getting an old tire sort of inner tube and strapping it to his shoulder and, making sure the joint was in place. I mean, that was pure improvisation. But it was a DNF for Gajser, Lewis. And also when he was looking to pass Coenen, and you think, the way he was riding, he probably would have done it. That would have meant another overall win. That would have meant 6 podium appearances in a row. It would have meant extending his championship lead of 49 points. It would have meant like 4 wins from 6. And instead, he's now facing a race against time to be fit for another double bill coming up in Portugal and Spain.
Yeah, as bad as it sounds, pre-second moto at the Grand Prix of Switzerland, I was fully checked out of this title fight. I was just like, yep, exactly as anticipated. Tim is just running away from this, and no one has an ounce of consistency to challenge him. So this has thrown everything we thought we knew in the air, and this is now, again, it sounds terrible to say, but this is quite interesting now and quite exciting to see where this goes from here. Of course, we don't exactly know what Tim's status is going to be. We know that he did dislocate his shoulder, as you said. We know that it did take 30 minutes for it to be put back in, which typically the longer a shoulder is out, the more ligament damage and whatnot can be done. So that's a concern. The statement from Honda said that there would be more checks this week, and I actually thought that we would have an update by now. So I guess that will determine whether there's any internal damage that has to be addressed. But my biggest takeaway, I think, is that, so we've got a weekend off this weekend, then a doubleheader in Agda and Lugo. I think Tim could miss those 2 events, err on the side of caution potentially, come back, which would be 4 weeks from now, and still win this championship. I really do. Ooh. I don't think there's a sense of urgency there. Yeah, he's still 27 points up, and he built a 39-point lead in 5 rounds. So
yeah, but then Romain Febvre now has 4 podiums in a row. 3 of them are runner-up positions, including his win as well. And if Gajser is out the window in Portugal and Lugo, then Febvre he's not going to go. I mean, of course, we haven't spoken about Lucas Coenen yet, so it's not going to be like a walk in the park for the Frenchman. But if he does take the maximum amount of points possible in those 2 rounds, then Gajser is going to be at a deficit and he's going to be chasing.
I just think that Tim is the best rider still, no matter what. And if missing those 2 events can ensure that he comes back in Ernée and May the 25th, I think, and is 100%, then he could start an assault and pull back. Because realistically, he's 27 points up now. So if he misses the next 2 events, he'll be 100? down? No, less than that, I'd say. 75 down?
Well, it's a maximum of 60 points.
Which Febvre isn't going to do.
62. How much do you get for a qualifying heat win? Is it 12 points?
10.
10. Okay. So then what? 50, so 50 plus 10. So then, 120 points.
And there's no way that Febvre pulls that much off. So yeah, I think that's certainly possible. But of course, this is all conjecture because we don't know the severity of the injury or what's actually going on there. Tim, it's worth saying that in the Honda statement...
We got to get our maths right here, because if Febvre does go maximum points in the next two GPs, that's 120. And Guy's just, 27 ahead?
Yeah.
Then, you're telling me he can peg back 80 points in the championship?
Febvre's not sweeping the next 6 races.
Right.
That's not happening.
Yeah, I agree with that, yes.
And to be honest, although Febvre did land on the podium, and as you said, another podium is quite a pleasant statistic, I would argue that it was a fairly inconsistent weekend, which only compounded the fact or drove home the point that he doesn't have the consistency to straight up match Gajser. So again, all conjecture, but if Gajser could miss those 2 events and then come back and be the same Gajser we had in the first 5 rounds and 2 motos, or 1 moto, because I refuse to count qualifying as a legitimate moto, then yeah, I think that would be possible. Although I doubt very much that'll be the scenario. Although it is worth noting that Honda HRC and Tim in his social media post hinted that preparation for the next round in Portugal is a priority. Like the tone that I took from both is very much an expectance that they will be on the line at the next Grand Prix.
Yeah, the last image of him on his Instagram channel is just sitting on some garden furniture with his arm in a sling. And knowing how much sort of Gajser rides and he likes to prepare and work out at his own kind of camp, you have to imagine that sort of downtime is going to be eating at him a little bit. But then, it's come... If there was ever a good time to have this thing, then it was now at the end of a triple header rather than at the beginning. So there is a good chance he could be looking at some decent physio and be in reasonably competitive shape. The problem is then if he tweaks the thing again, or if he falls off again, or if the joint is too weak and it's gives him constant jip, then you're basing a championship estimation on the guys that we saw before, where he really could be maybe 60 or 70% for the rest of the year, in which case he's easy pickings for the likes of Febvre and Coenen.
Yeah, it's difficult. Obviously, as I said, we don't know with certainty what is going to happen. What's your gut feeling, though, right now? Is your gut feeling that Gajser's done, or that Gajser's very much still in this thing?
My gut feeling is that Gajser's going to come back, but not 100%, and then he's going to have to weigh this thing out. I think he'll give Portugal a go, but it's a real sort of duck shoot in terms of trying to guess what the right kind of condition that he's going to be in. I'm not sure if I expressed myself very well then, but yeah, like you say, it's just pure speculation. I think what we see in Portugal will say a lot about what's going to happen for the next few Grand Prix.
It is astounding and really does reaffirm just how good he's been this year, that he DNF'd a race at round 6 so early in the season and still has a 27-point advantage.
Also, Lewis, something like a statistical challenge for you. If, say, he misses Portugal and Spain, when was the last time a rider won a championship in the Premier class by missing 2 Grand Prix? The only time I can think of an instance where a rider missed 1 Grand Prix and still won was Herlings in 2018. But then, he had a ridiculous set of stats for the rest of the year.
You're missing it, Adam. Come on, think about it. I know you'll get there. I know you're close. You're on the verge. Recenter than 2018.
Well, we kind of consigned 2022 to the...
Not 2022. I'm just...
What am I missing then?
2021.
Fill me in. Herlings missed 2 GPs in 2021.
Well, technically he missed 1 and 1 moto, I guess. Although actually...
Which GP did he miss?
Lockett. As always, Lockett and Herlings just don't jive. So even when it was the 4th round of the series or whatever it was, he still didn't make it.
You're right. I mean, he made his Grand Prix debut there in 2010 as a 15-year-old and dislocated his shoulder. That was the first of the many injuries in Jeffrey Herlings' career.
This is... Okay, so he officially missed 1 GP, but Herlings won the championship with no points scored in 4 motos, so equivalent to 2 GPs in total. Of course, he didn't start the second moto in Os that year because he was landed on in the first moto, and then he withdrew.
But he won the first one.
Yes. What a day. And then he withdrew from a moto in Trentino because of a first turn crash and mechanical problem. So in total, he did win the not exactly the same, but in total, he did win the championship with 4 no scores equivalent to 2 rounds.
Backtracking a little bit to the track situation, I praised the FIM for their sort of accessibility earlier. I wonder what they'll do now. I mean, will they try to fix this situation with the mud mounds? Is there going to be any action taken at all? Will somebody in the paddock, one rider, stand up and say we need to be listened to a bit more? Because for the story I produced on the On Track Off Road Substack, I got some words from none other than Ben Watson, who broke 2 bones in his hand after running into one of those admittedly much larger mud constructions in 2019 in Germany. And I remember that pretty well because that was the time when I think he just scored his best ever GP result, like the round before, like in Latvia, and there was a real sort of momentum around him at that time. So then to break his hand in Germany was like a real sort of poorly timed setback. So I'm getting Ben's words on those. He was saying that the riders have been complaining about them since sort of 2019. So it's been quite a few years now, and you think if they haven't been listened to, then somebody needs to get their act together and try to put some sort of representative body together to say to in front and to the FIM, we have concerns about this area of the track, what can be done, rather than just a load of riders making a track walk and shouting at the builders or having these kind of informal, almost flippant comments about things that need to be changed.
The issue is I don't know what the alternative would be, and of course I'm not smart enough or hired to come up with that, but off the top of my head I don't know what the alternative could be. And the more pressing issue again is that one thing that can be fixed right away is making sure the track markers appropriately align with the track limit. That's to me, that's the smoking gun here, is the fact that the mound was inside the yellow marker. That's the point blank, no room for interpretation. That's where the crime was committed. And
also be careful what you wish for, because I think it was just over 10 years ago that MXGP ditched the green fencing. There's this sort of infamous green mesh that kind of used to set the boundaries for MXGP tracks. I mean, it was fucking terrible because riders would run offline, they would get chewed up in the rear wheel, and it would end a Grand Prix race. I can remember Tommy Searle having a torrid time in the Grand Prix of Portugal for that very reason. But the argument then by sort of the FIM and the promoters was that it was a safety measure because it would actually catch and stop bikes and riders flipping out into other sections of the track. But it went away. It was replaced by those kind of AMA Pro National style yellow perspex, well, not perspex, like kind of flexible plastic markers, and we've had that every way since. But like you say, Lewis, maybe they just need to be more diligent with where they're placed.
Yeah, because the issue is if you don't have something like the mound there, then the riders will just play fast and loose with the edge of the track, and they will, by the end of the weekend, the track will be X amount wider than it was intended to be because there are no repercussions, and as riders, you're always just going to search for the smoothest, fastest line, and that will ultimately end up being wider and wider. Before we move on, it has been a very checkered start for MXGP in 2025. We've had 6 rounds, and the split of good and bad is really quite down the middle. We had Argentina, which was hailed as maybe one of the best MXGP tracks ever. Trentino was a superb event, but we also had 19 riders in MX2 in Sardinia. We had the Kozar mess. So it's not been the most controversial start, but it does feel a little bit unsettled with all that's going on track and off of it.
Yeah, that's a pretty fair assessment. I would also say the scheduling is a little strange. Having a triple header so early in the year as well, you're in danger of. No, I would say there's a danger, but people get to a limit quite quickly in terms of having to move around, having to set up, having to sort of go through the rigors of a Grand Prix. I realise we're we should be accompanied by the world's smallest violin, compared to the AMA schedule. But I still think it's excessive to have three Grand Prix on the same weekend, if only just to allow people that are suffering with injuries time to sort of convalesce and get back.
Who is MXGP's title favourite now? Is it still Tim? Or can you not say that with confidence?
I think it's still Tim. Until we get to Portugal and we can see what's what, then it's still him.
I will also say it's still Tim, pending a statement from HRC with details on what these further examinations have revealed. But let's save it just for fun.
Will they say anything?
Well, you have to chuckle. You have to chuckle how HRC's post-race press release was the vaguest of vague. It didn't even outline upper body injury. It just said something has happened and we're going to look into it. And then Tim comes out not too long later and just blows every detail out in his social media post. I mean, a sign of the times a little bit, but funny.
Yeah. Also, from a corporate point of view, there's only maybe so much you can say in an official text. But I do think, a couple of details wouldn't have gone amiss. I mean, was it his elbow? Was it his shoulder? Was it his humerus? Was, some other kind of issue going on? And, if Gajser's there 30 minutes waiting for it to be realigned, the joint, and he's also going through scans and whatever else, then, I think that's just sort of basic information. And the way that Tim's been riding and how dominant HRC have been, then, I think that information is quite sort of important. I really don't, it shows my ignorance here, but I don't know if the team have an official social media channel where they put out this stuff. But, it was... it's odd that it was left to Gajser's own Instagram channel to sort of provide the meat of the details.
Like I say, though, it's just the way of the world now, isn't it? Like, the riders are their own PR with social media and stuff. People like us are fading away, Adam.
But also, what does Gajser say next? I mean, if he's got a season-ending injury, then you imagine there is going to be some sort of statement. But if he has certain degree tears in ligaments or tendons or whatever, then how much does he communicate about that?
What if, again, for fun, if Tim Gajser is out for the year, who do you pick then?
Well, it's obvious, isn't it?
Is it though? I don't think it is.
The best chance to win, isn't it? Yeah, Coenen had a great Grand Prix. Maybe we can talk about him now. But I don't see him being... He's a rookie, and I think, you need a few things to fall into place, pretty much like they did for Gajser in 2016, and also for Romain Febvre in 2015, for him to sort of lift a championship at the end of the year. I mean, he's understandably so. He's just been a little hit and miss, still a little bit too prone to errors. But then, of course, Febvre also tends to crash now and again.
Do you want to know my wild theory that you're going to laugh at?
What's your wild theory? You're going to say Kevin Hogmo or something?
No, worse. Don't laugh at me because I'm not saying this with certainty. I'm just saying you have to give it a 1%. You have to consider the 1% chance that this could happen. Okay?
Go on.
Febvre and Coenen are both known for being a little bit hazardous, inconsistent.
Ragged.
If we get 6 rounds down the line and we're talking about the fact that both Febvre and Coenen are nursing injuries, you wouldn't be surprised, would you?
Yeah, I think it's fair.
Okay, that's fair. If Herlings can get his act together quickly, and those other examples fall into place in certain ways, I could see a world where Herlings is making a bit of a run towards this to the finish line. Again, it doesn't happen unless Febvre and Coenen run into issues. But my point is, those are two... If I'm Herlings and I'm kind of weighing up whether I need to go full gas on this thing, I'm like, well, those are two riders who I could probably say there's a chance that would happen.
Did I do well in keeping a straight face?
I sound insane when I'm saying it, and I don't believe, with no certainty do I believe that this is ever going to happen, but I at least think that it is on the table. if Hurlings can really get his act
he's
together.
240 points behind Lewis.
No, but I'm saying that Febvre and Coenen have issues.
Right.
So then he's what? 180 down on Koldenhoff? I believe a Hurlings could pull 180 back on Koldenhoff.
But he would have to go back to like 2018 levels of form.
Okay, I sound insane. No, I sound insane. I feel dumb.
No. I mean, I applaud you for, not because you're a fan of Jeffrey and you champion for him.
I don't like Jeffrey.
I applaud you for entertaining the scenario, because Hurlings has proven to be a ridiculously serial winner in this class, and it's not beyond the realms of possibility. He is racing himself back to fitness, and unbelievably, in this sort of 12-day pause between races, he's going to be doing another Dutch championship as well as one other event, I think, in France.
He's going to be trying. No one. It's all very confusing.
Yeah, but he's still racing himself back into condition, and that obviously comes with risk. But that's his way, isn't it? I mean, he doesn't sort of sit on the sofa or just go cycling and from dawn till dusk. He has to be competing.
Okay, so I'm insane, but rather than ridicule me, you're doing the supportive thing of like coming up to me, patting me on the back, and going, "It's okay, mate. You tried.
Yeah,
you turned up to the podcast. You gave it a go."
I thought it was good podcasting. It was good speculation. It was a discussion point, because there will be Jeffrey Hurlings fans who are suddenly rubbing their hands thinking, well, if these guys drop out like they have in Supercross this year, then what could happen?
You agree with me that if Febvre and Coenen run into issues, Hurlings can pull back 180 points on Koldenhoff?
Yeah, I guess.
Like that's much more plausible.
Issues.
Well, okay, that is a point. Anyway,
that's a conversation to have after he wins his first GP. Because if it happens by round 7 or round 8, you can say, well, listen, is this real? Is this comeback now done? Is sort of the train picking up speed?
Had Hurlings known that this was potential, and this is also, I'm saying this presuming that guys would be out for the entire year, which I don't think is going to happen either. I'm just slotting the puzzle pieces in place. Had Hurlings known that this scenario would just potentially play out with guys are getting hurt, blah, blah, blah. Wonder if he would have come back a bit sooner, and I wonder if when he came back, like Sardinia, he very much wasn't racing. Wonder if he maybe would have put a little more effort in to stack points here. Because that's also part of the reason what I'm saying is so insane is because he hasn't been racing with that mindset. Whereas if he had known that this could have gone this way, maybe he would have been racing with that mindset, and maybe what I'm saying isn't quite as insane.
And also, imagine if he loses like the title or a top 3 championship placing just by a couple of points. I mean, that would also twist his melon.
If that happens, I'm counting this as a win, and I'm pulling back this podcast, and I'm counting that's a win for Lewis. But also a win for Lewis. You may not remember this. In fact, you definitely don't. We ended the last podcast, and do you remember what I said?
No.
I said, I think this weekend will be where Coenen breaks out and goes 1-1.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
I actually meant to pull the clip, but I couldn't be bothered. Full laziness.
What was the route of Lucas Coenen? What is he? 18 years old? 18 years 18. Old. That's right, because he was confirmed as the youngest ever winner in the Premier class, wasn't he? Beat Eric Gabor's record. The root of his success in just his 6th GP on the 450 was those starts, those 2 hole shots. Because like you said earlier, it wasn't a track that favoured, it didn't throw its arms open and say, here's lots of overtaking spots that are either simplistic or fair, or, they're not going to, throw some bizarre track situation at you where you have to take a large risk. I mean, it was tight. And, Coenen just nailed those starts. And it was interesting kind of listening to his press conference words afterwards, where he said on Saturday it was terrible. His starts weren't that great. He didn't feel that good. He had arm pump. But then, I don't know what he did on Sunday, but come Monday, he was just able to rattle off, those laps, that pace, and do what, I think we've said before on the podcast, his former team manager, Rasmus Jorgensen, said, get the starts, make the laps, and do a Jorge Prado. Also, the first Belgian 450 win since Dessau in 2018,
which is
wow.
much longer than you'd expect, because Dessau won a moto in his final season, which was 2020, but he was quite far removed from his last Grand Prix win at that point.
So his last overall was 2018?
Yeah, Russia. Unless I've
okay.
missed something, which is possible.
Was Russia was when he broke his leg, wasn't it, the following year as well?
I don't remember.
Was that in the rain?
I don't remember Dessau breaking his leg in Russia.
Yeah, Orleanok. He took a wide line and it threw the Kawasaki's threw him off. But I think that 2018 success was in wet weather, or
no, that was 2017. It was wet.
Right. Okay.
2018 he was one of the few people to take a non-Hurlings victory. I think it was just 2 for Carli, 1 for Dessau, from memory. But yeah, no, Coenen was superb. Although it should be a massive surprise for this youngster, this MXGP rookie, to work the established stars like that, it isn't at all. We all know what his potential is. We all know what he can deliver. So it's not like watching this was just awe-inspiring. And as you mentioned, starts were crucial, but then he was just the best rider as well. He was unfazed, unchallenged. Yeah, I wouldn't, as I've said a few times on this podcast, if you tell me that Coenen reels off 4 GP wins in a row, I'm not surprised in the slightest. And for that reason, to return to a previous topic, I don't think, if Gajser's out, I don't think it's as clear-cut as everyone else that Febvre is your title favourite. I think that Febvre and Coenen are fairly interchangeable.
Yes, I would say the tendency for mistakes, though, would lie larger with Lucas. Nice alliteration there, but only because of his rookie status, and he's going to have to handle the 450 in places like Lommel, around sort of the marbles at Locket. He's going to get better. He's getting more familiar with the bike every single GP, Lewis. But I still think there is value in Romain Febvre's experience, even if he is more than 12 years old. Is he 12 years older than Lucas Coenen?
Maybe more.
Yeah. But the thing about Coenen now is at the age, being a GP winner at the age of 18. I mean, who knows what he could do the rest of this year? He could, like you say, soar off into a remarkable streak of results, or he could suffer his own injury crisis at one point. He's already done that at the beginning of the year. And what happens next for him? Does he really, say he wins the title in his first year, like you say? I mean, is he really going to spend the next 10 years of his life in MXGP racing? Or, does the lure of Supercross come even quicker? Because I can't see him, forging a sort of 10, 12-year career in MXGP.
Well, to be clear, as I alluded to it in the past, but 100% they are negotiating with Honda, Kawasaki and Yamaha in MXGP. That's without doubt. So there is that, and performances like that will only bolster his chances of getting a very lucrative deal. And I'd imagine whatever deal it is would include a pathway to America, a la the KTM deal that's currently in place. But for whatever reason, it doesn't seem like that's going to take hold. A bit of beauty in this situation. You've referenced a few times that Coenen is a rookie, and we can't count on him to be consistent, mount a serious title challenge. Well, to find evidence of the opposing view, look no further than Romain Febvre, who waded through his first couple of GPs and then landed on the MXGP podium for the first time and never fell off it. Won his first MXGP Grand Prix and then won 4 in a row. Maybe
I want to say as well that Febvre won his first GP at round 6.
Please hold.
I think he won his first moto at Matali.
His first moto was round 6.
Oh, there we go. Nearly.
Yeah, nearly. But so ultimately, to defy Febvre's chances, it could be Coenen using the Febvre playbook. There's also a story in that somewhere.
Like it.
Stay tuned for that Netflix thriller. But no, good. Also, I want to do a tip of the hat to Fly Racing because they've not exactly been so successful in MXGP, and for them to sweep both motos in both classes is really quite something. Their first Grand Prix win since Sean Simpson in 2017, Indonesia. So there is that.
Wow, really?
Also. Yes.
Okay.
I think that's their only one on record. That was a one moto affair. I was doing the PR that day as well. I also was doing the PR for Fly Racing that day. But I'll tell you who I wish I was doing the PR for, and that is Polosport, because wow, what interesting, fascinating narratives I'd have to share with the world. The amount of countless innovations, elevations going on at Polosport would just shock you. And I'm going to communicate one right now by saying, hey, Yamaha YZ125 or 250 riders, this one's for you. If you've been riding models from 2002 to 2021, listen up, because Polosport is something that's going to make your heart race. They are introducing the new restyling kit, a complete transformation for your Yamaha, giving your bike a 2024 look without any complicated modifications. The kit includes everything you need: a new gas tank, a full race seat, an airbox, all designed to fit seamlessly. No fuss, no hassle, just a fresh design that breathes new life into your dirt bike. Polosport has exactly what you need, so check them out. Thank you to Polosport for their support of this podcast. Little play at the words there, or rhyme, I don't know what you'd call that, but sounded nice. Bonacorsi needs credit. We need to give Bonacorsi credit.
Wait. Let's go back to Lucas Kuhn. What do the Coenens do, realistically? I mean, if they go to HRC and they're looking at the AMA, that's just not going to happen, is it? I mean, it's very cool that HRC have two sets of brothers, in elite levels on both sides of the Atlantic. But that's not really going to transfer out unless the Lawrences decide, right, we're off somewhere else.
No, because they could just fill the 250 side. I mean, what I ultimately don't know now...
Lucas is not going to go back to a 250, is he?
Well, that's what I was going to say. I've not actually heard it mentioned anywhere whether Lucas would go back to a 250 for America or do a Prado. Based on the fact that they now seem intent on staying in Europe for a little while longer, I would presume Lucas is doing a Prado.
And also, I mean, I understand if they're getting jumpy with KTM because there may be some speculation about the long-term vision for racing for the Austrians, but there's no other factory team that's as close between the American side and the European side as KTM. Second, I would say it's probably HRC in terms of cooperation on the technical side and just general sharing information for logistics and whatever else. I'd say HRC a second. And then you start going down the scale. I mean, I wouldn't say that, Ice One Kawasaki are intrinsically linked to, say, Pro Circuit or, the 450 setup with, Jason Anderson and Jorge Prado. And then, even less so, perhaps Triumph and also Yamaha. I don't see where the Coenens could plan like a successful MXGP to AMA route other than where they are.
Yeah, I don't also really know why the KTM thing is seemingly going up in smoke a little bit. That's also confusing to me. I'm sure KTM is still in the offing somewhere, but it's just bizarre because as far as we know, there is a contract there. So the fact that they are definitely negotiating elsewhere obviously indicates that isn't an ideal setting, which makes almost no sense at all.
The
I don't know.
Coenens are still represented by Lucas Myrtle.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know whether that's a good thing or like an incendiary thing or what. It's I think it's tricky to plan the next move. You would say getting into Honda would be the best shout, but then why would Honda need them at the moment?
Well, true. From what I hear as well, I think Tim is pushing for Lucas quite heavily in the HRC MXGP side. So that could also open up Pandora's box, because then where does Fernandez go? Yeah. And then where does the rider that Fernandez replaces go? And,
the most natural thing, like you said, would be to put both twins in the 250 AMA side. Shimoda, if he's out, then you have the Lawrences and you have the Coenens. Talk about a family affair. But, that would probably be the most common sense solution.
Yeah. As always, the Coenens are a little bit of a mystery, so who knows? But it will be very interesting because whatever they do will have massive implications on both sides of the Atlantic, I would presume, because whatever they do will include some sort of long-term strategy, which said manufacturer will have to pivot around for the foreseeable.
And also, what about Sasha? Does he almost become like a bit of a ball and chain for Lucas?
Yes. And that's very interesting. That's very interesting because if I'm a team right now, I'm still taking Sasha, but it's somewhat reluctantly. I'm still like, yeah, no, I see why I would want Sasha. I see the potential there, but it would be somewhat reluctantly.
He would scare the shit out of me on a supercross track. I mean, really.
Well, thankfully, I think that's a way off.
Well, yeah, I mean, he might have a mentor and like technical switch and really like find his space on a supercross track. But if he rides it the way he rides in MXGP, then it's going to be horrendous.
Yeah, that's a fair assumption. I think that could not be put possibly better, which made no sense. We almost skipped over Jeremy Seewer. Honestly, a lot to come from this GP. We gotta hustle here, but a lot to come from this GP. Ducati's first podium, Seewer's first podium of the year. Of course, those two go in tandem. Honestly, watching the last 2-3 laps where Seewer found out he needed Hurlings for the podium, visibly wicked it up. Somewhat emotional, I was watching that. Like, it was like that again is the beauty of MXGP. Home setting, home crowd. It was genuinely like goosebump material watching Seewer chase that down. Agreed?
Yeah, and the fact that he was on the podium at his home GP. He made a performance like that, drove the fans crazy, and did it for Ducati, and only their sort of 8th GP.
Oh yeah,
I think that's probably that's probably the biggest story from this first part of the season.
Yeah, and once again, I feel like I said this after round 1, but I feel like the Ducati success isn't getting the credit or the exposure that it deserves.
I mean, I don't know. In between, like Alessandro Lupino filling in and Tony Cairoli filling in, and then the bike being certainly capable as starts. It's not like Ducati have slipped into a bit of a, mid-pack obscurity where you hardly see them on TV. I think they've had some good coverage, Lewis.
No, but I just mean
I don't think anyone expected them to be this good that early.
I just mean like in the wake of their first podium, I feel like this week should be mass Ducati celebration and discussion on all media outlets, all social media, amongst fans, podcasts, and I just don't think it's that. I feel like it's quite a flippant attitude to it. But then again, to kind of contradict myself, I don't know if there's much more to say other than Ducati have a podium.
Well, also, there's been 2 other big talking points. The youngest ever Grand Prix winner in the Premier Class and Tim Gajser's sort of crash. I mean, those we've spent most of the podcast talking about those 2 over the fact that Ducati are on the podium.
Yeah, that's true. I'm just happy that this silences some of the Seewer doubts, or the Seewer doubts, as people want me to say, because Seewer was getting a lot of unnecessary criticism through the first 5 rounds. Why. Yeah, it was really quite aggressive, I felt, on a new bike as well, and I think this underlined his brilliance once again. It's a good job to all involved. I think that's a nice, feel-good story, and we talked about the highs and lows of MXGP in 2025, but having Ducati debut in their series and have this success is, it's good. Good for in front.
Also bodes well for what Ducati could do in Supercross. I mean, the bike is clearly able. I mean, maybe it's not a winning bike at the moment, but it can start. And people like Jeremy Seewer can steer it around a track like that and take a trophy.
I still hold some hope that when Cairoli wild cards at Redbud in the summer, that Seewer will somehow make the trip as well. But it doesn't sound like it's exactly on the cards, but that would be cool. So I guess we can live in hope. As I said earlier, Bonacorsi deserves a lot of credit for what he's done this season. He's been brilliant on various different soils, and this is somewhat of a revelation, although again, I don't think it's exactly that surprising. Although again, in the Yamaha trials and tribulations, the one rider they let go is turning out to be better than their trio across 2025 MXGP. So trials and tribulations for Yamaha, but let's not overlook how good Bonacorsi and his Fantic teammate Koldenoff have been in 2025.
Yeah, Glenn Koldenoff cementing his position as a top 5 runner. I actually knew that could be possible in 2025, but I didn't really think Glenn would be doing this well, this consistently, this early.
There's a lot to do, but I have a lot of questions for Koldenoff, so I need to figure that out as well. Maybe we'll get him on this podcast, because I think he would do that. Fantastic.
Well, my first race is going to be Germany, and then you're coming to Lommel, right?
I think
maybe
so.
We just need to, sort of have an inquisition. Say, Glenn, why is it going all so right?
Speaking of it going also right, Kevin Horgmo, another top 6 finish. He is just right there. And also, colour me intrigued as to whether if Tim Gajser is out long term, does Horgmo get some help or potentially bumped to Honda HRC? I would like to see that. Because I think, once again, as I've beat the drum countless times here, I think the Horgmo has been fantastic in 2025. And also fantastic was Hurlings in that second moto, a real return to form, a glimmer of hope. I think that confirmed the trajectory that he is on. It was quite obvious to me that he was very much riding within his means. He still looks like he was just circulating and not willing to take unnecessary risk. But the fact that him circulating is now so close to a podium finish tells me that he's on the right track and this is trending in the direction that it should be. Admittedly, still not quite as consistent as I would have expected across this triple header, but that's a flag in the ground for Hurlings.
I think also, just to go back to Horgmo, one question we have that we don't have the answer to is how advanced is his technical package compared to, say, the HRC bikes. I would venture that it's not actually much on there at all that's kind of special compared to Gajser and Fernandez. So that gives him even more credit. Also for the starts that he's making. And then on Hurlings, another factor, Lewis, is, his future. How long this thing drags on, how much it becomes like this sort of fly buzzing around his head. I mean, Hurlings has always been one of those riders as well that likes to get that kind of background turmoil sorted quite early. I mean, contracts have never really been like this big distraction for him. So I kind of hope whatever discussions he's having with KTM or other interested parties maybe get squared away soon so that he can just sort of focus all the energy he has on results.
I can say with certainty that there is nothing getting squared away soon. I think it's going to be a little while. So watch this space. But no, great to see Hurlings up there in the second moto. With Hurlings up there, Seewer up there, we almost had a bit of a throwback moto with names from the past who we missed dearly at the top of the pack. Do we want to tackle the Fernandez disqualification? I guess we need to. There's so much to get to. But ultimately, he went through pit lane without stopping, which is grounds for disqualification.
I mean, how do you enforce that? I mean, you can't do a speed limit either, can you?
No, but that's also... But I would presume the idea is if you go through smooth pit lane without stopping, then it's ultimately could be an advantage.
Yes.
So that's for ground. But and they've always been quite fickle with pit lane. Like I remember Latvia in 2015, Tommy Searle got disqualified for entering pit lane backwards. So pit lane has always been quite a hot property for disqualifications and whatnot.
Well, rightly so, because it can be pretty dangerous and hairy in there, especially if you do get agitated riders throttling their way through. But then I'm not sure if there's a protocol or a procedure for, qualifying exactly what is a stop. I mean, the riders just have to come to a halt, put both feet down, select neutral. I don't know. How do you sort of effectively police that?
Yeah, that is difficult. And then I did see, I think it was in the HRC statement, that, here it is. Unfortunately, unbeknownst to him, midway through the race, he had been knocked off the track and had to pass through pit lane, where due to an incident in Trentino, he was more focused on rejoining the track in the correct position than remembering one of the rules that he had to come to a complete stop. I don't know what incident happened in Trentino that's relative to this, but that's a wild word salad of there's a lot here going on with this, but ultimately I think it's quite clear. He went into pit lane, he got disqualified because he didn't stop.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah, and that saves us some time as well. I did want to quickly tackle this, which hopefully won't be too much of a tangent, but I did have to chuckle in one of my podcast greatest hits. We haven't talked about Jago Geert's social media in a while, and I did have to chuckle that his post-race report said, two bad starts today, but managed to get 12th overall. In the qualifying race, I had blurry vision on my right eye, so I'm happy that I could ride today. So, what? How is that just being slipped in there?
And also blurry vision. Why? I mean, do you have a bug in your eye, or did you hit your head? Because there's also different permutations to that.
This is such a bizarre social media post to me. Like, two bad starts today, not a bad day. By the way, also, I may have a severe neurological problem. Like, oh, okay. You know, like it's a bit weird to me, that whole thing. Like, I was reading this quite casually and then startled.
His next post might be, had a good moto today. I had a patch over my left eye after a problem. Surprisingly, you can ride Lommel quite well with one eye.
Yeah, exactly. That is sort of the vibe that I'm getting from this post. It's odd. Not odd, because I've known it all along, is Ben Watson's... What's the word? Prominence in this class. Down in turn 1 in the first moto, and try telling Ben it's a tough track to pass on. Last to 18th, 17th. 18th? 17th? One of those. Doesn't really matter. And then 7th in the second moto. Another top 10 on a non-Ben Watson track. Looks like we're being proven right.
13th overall. Can somebody please get that man something for his motorcycle to help him with his starts? And actually swapping some messages with him to write that bit about the mud mounds. He did mention the team might have a new clutch. So, you know, there could be some extra potential for getting not just out of the gate, but also that drive in the first few meters along the start straight.
Well, maybe the new clutch will come in clutch. And also, I'm not sure if we're like... butting heads here, but you've flaunted this conversation with Ben Watson a lot. So are you trying to like get a reaction out of me, or because it just seems to be a lot of just dangling of that carrot?
No, one of our last messages, Lewis, was the fact I said that you were still wearing the hat, waving the flag, have the t-shirt on, and he sent back a few laughing emojis saying he knows. I think the depth of the emotion is there.
It's annoying that he didn't message me saying Adam just told me this great news about you, but guess I know where I stand now.
But also, a small shame on you for not mentioning Jan Pansar's second top 10 overall finish.
Yeah, that's
full
true.
Props to the Slovenian. 2 Slovenians together in the final result sheet.
I'm just trying to get us out of here, Adam. We're going far too long.
Okay. MX2.
I know we want to see the sights, but I don't know how this has gone on for so long. But, Adam, shame on you. You've just tried to put Simon down, and I've always been there. Never doubted him. I've told you time and time again that Simon is the greatest rider in the world, and this is coming, and I never swayed from that opinion, and here we are now. But no, in all honesty, this is not cause for celebration for Simon. This is cause for relief, because a rider like Simon should not have gone near 2 years without Grand Prix wins. So, if anything, this has puzzled me more and left me with more questions about why this didn't happen sooner, because he looked like a rider fit to win every single GP that he starts.
He's another rider that's rumoured to be heading off from KTM climbs.
I never heard this.
On Austrian machinery, yeah.
Tell more.
No, it's just one of the rumours that I sort of bubbled up from the GP in Switzerland. It might be completely unfounded, especially after this win. But he pretty much sent the template for Lucas Coenen to follow in Switzerland. And where did it come from, Lewis? That's what I want to know.
No, Adam, we're not moving on from that. Who did you hear he's talking to?
No, I just, just a little rumour that surfaced. That not that he's talking to anyone in particular, but that he just might not be KTM bound, which I found quite strange.
So then what would...
But then it's just that time of year.
So let's say then potentially that KTM lose Längenfelder, Coenens. Call me crazy.
They still have Marc-Antoine Rossi. I know that's not exactly like a large swap in for a Grand Prix winner at the moment, but they also have
Adamo's up. Adamo's up, though,
Oh, he's got to move, yeah. What, you mean in age?
No, his contract's up, I think. So he could potentially move. Do you not see a world where in 2026 we do not have a trio of Austrian teams in the paddock? And potentially, maybe the factory Austrian team goes away and it's just left to Carli and Nestaan.
Yeah, or how it used to be with Champ KTM, where you have just the factory team is a 1-2 rider man effort. It's so hard to predict at the moment. I mean, KTM still have like a general AGM. Well, an AGM is a general meeting coming up, I think, at the end of this month or in a couple of days' time. There's still a lot of strategy to be decided, but I can't see how they would support three teams and what, eight riders. But then, if you lose the Coenens, then you still have Kaider Wolf. I mean, Liam Everts could potentially revert back to being orange.
No, I don't think that's happening.
No.
No.
I mean, you also have look at the European Championship results as well. I mean, you have Aaron Catona. I don't know how you say that. And also Nicolo Alvisi. They're sort of smashing it in EMX 125. Kaz Volk, a young Dutch rider as well. I mean, you could easily slide him into Red Bull KTM colours. I mean, the conveyor belt's always rolling.
I'd imagine that Simon would be talking to Yamaha or Kawasaki. That's what. I love this. I do enjoy it when I get surprised with a rumour that I didn't know and didn't expect. Really gets my mind running and racing. But
I hope it's wrong. I think it'd be wrong for him to leave.
I don't know. I've been on record multiple times of saying that although I think that the manufacturer is good for him, I think the Italian setting of Ducati is not. So that.
Yeah, you want him in Belgium, don't you?
Yes, I think that would be intriguing. But yes, I don't see why he would leave Triumph, maybe.
Yeah,
interesting. Or Ducati, maybe. Interesting. Just, there's so many options out there now. But, once again, baffling that this didn't happen sooner for Simon. He's now only 3 points down in the title race.
Yeah, that's another bizarre thing, because it seems like Kaider Wolf has just been Mr. Consistency. I mean, has he been on the podium, I think, every single race?
All but one, I think.
Right, I mean, and only to have like a 3-point lead seems a bit cruel.
Yeah, especially considering, in contrast, I feel like Längenfelder has been fairly invisible thus far.
Yeah, good shout. And also, I mean, Längenfelder's got 3 podiums, but I mean, Hankey's got maybe a more qualifying heat wins, but I'm not sure. But this has always been a bit of a weird track for Kai. That's why I think his Saturday win was a big confidence boost, because his title campaign nearly came off. It's sort of learner wheels in 2024 at this GP, and for him to take that win on Saturday was a big thing. But then he made a mistake, right? I can't remember if it was the first or second moto. He had to sort of fight his way back. I can't remember, to the top 5 or something. But yes, it wasn't a perfect GP for him.
Do you think, do you honestly entertain the idea that this could spark something within Längenfelder and he now goes toe-to-toe with Kaider Wolf the rest of the way, reeling off consistent wins? Or are you still sceptical about where Längenfelder's prominence lies?
You sound like you're trying to persuade yourself as well.
I don't know, because there's a part the old Lewis outlook on Längenfelder is starting to flicker away in the background. The light bulb is gaining watts, but then once bitten, twice shy.
I think this is his best chance. In the current lay of the land, having taken this win as well, a perfect 1-1. If he doesn't kick on from this, then I think it's pretty damning.
Speaking of damning, I was very, very curious starting the second moto, because I was ready to basically come to a conclusive verdict on Längenfelder, because if, once again, he had won the first moto and then finished 5th in the second moto, that would have been enough for me to close the book and say, right, that's just who he is and this is never going to improve. So for him to buck the trend somewhat, I do have one eyebrow raised now. Like, potentially, this could be something.
Well, that's also why MX2 is suddenly, in the last year or two, become... I mean, last year was a duel, wasn't it, between two teammates that didn't seem to have a lot of love for each other. And this year, it's just kind of fascinating of the different personalities and styles that we have, because you have Simon, who could easily win a race. It seems like, with one Jago Gert's eye closed. But then struggling with the next moto, and then you have like a rider like Liam Everts who can go 3-3 and get on the box. I mean, Liam also seems like a rider that can do that in his sleep. I mean, he can post top 3, top 4 moto results at will, and that consistency is going to make sure he's hovering at the top of the standings throughout the season. And then Kaider Wolf, of course, who is just almost like an old hand now when it comes to maintaining consistency and excellence, especially under pressure. And you sort of throw somebody else, I don't know, like Camden McLennan in to mix things up. A couple of the sort of young, sort of raw Spaniards as well. People like Kaz Volk. I'm probably forgetting someone else, like Lata or Ferrucci. And Andrea Damo as well, who's somebody I would put on the same sort of level as Kai de Wolf in terms of being been there and done it and capable of getting those results. And I think Damo was pretty pissed off with himself. I think it was in the first moto he made a slip and needed to regain positions, but otherwise he should have been on the podium again as well.
If Längenfelder ends his MX2 career without a world title, I think that would be surprising, crushing, alarming.
Worse than Gertz or not? No, it can't be.
It can't be. It can't be. But the fact that Gertz went up against Vial, etc., maybe makes it a little more, with that context, it makes it a little more understandable. Whereas when you say Längenfelder was bested by Kai de Wolf and Andrea Adamo, who he had essentially won, he had won GP, he had won a GP before those two. So he was faster in his progression. He was ahead of those two on the curve. So for those two get one and him not, that would surprise me more so than just saying Gertz got beat by Vial and other greats. Less striking.
I think that's fair.
I was surprised that this was Liam Everts. I can't talk today. I was surprised that this was Liam Everts' second podium of the season because I feel like he's been so good that I just presumed he had been up there 3 or 4 times. So, yeah.
He's been Mr. Fourth position, hasn't he? I mean, I think he's been fourth a couple of times already.
Well, taking inspiration from Ben Watson's 2018 season. And then a couple of triumphs in 5th and 6th, McClellan and Fares. Good to have Fares back. Fares' return to MXGP is more interesting than it has maybe been given credit for, I think. So I'm interested to see where he goes from here. Admittedly, it hasn't been great so far, but of course the crash at the 3rd round hasn't helped that. And I wanted to give this credit last week, but we ran out of time. Valerio Lata has turned it around somewhat. The first 2-3 rounds weren't good at all, but he's starting to find his place between 5th and 10th, which I think is perfectly acceptable and quite fine for him.
Bit disappointed by Thibaut Benistan. I haven't done my research though, so I don't know if he was struggling with illness or injury or whatever, but I thought, he would be better around that particular circuit.
I think that Thibaut Benistan is just basically enter a GP, throw a dart at a dartboard, and that's his result. I don't think you can expect anything. I really just don't. We've seen so much, we have so much evidence that just there's not a consistent trend there. He can win any weekend, and that is the biggest compliment that a Grand Prix rider can ever have. But on the flip side, he can be invisible on any weekend, and that's detrimental to his career opportunities.
Lewis, it was kind of cool to see that first turn camera of both gates. And I mean, they were full, weren't they? I mean, it looked like how a Grand Prix should be. But I found myself looking at the MX2 charge down to the first corner and wanting to contradict all the complaints that we've been making in podcasts recently, because if you do have 40 riders in the gate or 30 riders or whatever, how soon is it before on a track like Frauenfeld when you're running into back markers and then there's even more potential for disaster? I mean, Adamo was particularly vocal about this, wasn't he? Like last week in Trentino. Maybe it's just somewhat unusual for the leaders in MX2 to have to deal with multiple back markers on a regular basis.
Yeah, and it is worth noting that we've been critical of EMX 250, but we did have full gates, and this was an EMX 250 event, so I think it's only right that we acknowledge that. So maybe we don't have all the answers. It's such a... You follow any other race series, Supercross, F1, MotoGP, Pro Motocross to an extent, all of the circuits and facilities follow such a playbook. MXGP sways so dramatically from one side of the coin to the other that you end up at a circuit like Frauenfeld and you're like, well, maybe we don't want full gates here because Frauenfeld maybe isn't equipped for it. So like, I don't know what the answer is because there's no consistency with the deliverables. And therefore, how do you cater a rulebook around that? I mean, don't get me wrong. It was great to see full gates, as you said. And back markers are a part of the sport. And that's a beautiful part of racing. But yeah, Frauenfeld maybe was one of the tracks that could have done with 30 instead of 40.
I still think our original observations apply, and that there should only be Grand Prix points down to 15th, and there has to be more differentiation between being a European Championship rider and a World Championship rider. I'm still not seeing any sign of that, but in terms of seeing more riders in the gate, that's exactly what you expect from a Grand Prix, like the biggest annual dirt bike racing event in that particular country. I mean, that's how it should be.
Yes, agreed. I think that is something that we can all agree on. Something else that we can all agree on is the benefit of running Prox racing parts, which you can do yourself by heading to pro-x.com, and you can see the wide array of products that are there for your machine. Just use their easy-to-use select your ride function, year, make, model, click search, and then you will find all that is available for your motorcycle. And in fact, I'm on the website now, and it says up to 25% off when you shop at pro-x.com. So there you go, there's some added incentive. And of course now Valentin Guillot has joined the list of privateers who are relying on Prox racing parts to further their racing career and their competitiveness against the factories like HRC and whatnot. So you too can take advantage of the same knowledge, experience, quality that Prox racing parts provide. So thank you to them and Polosport for their support of this podcast. Anything else?
No, that's it. I can't believe we're going to have a week where we won't be doing this podcast.
Don't sound so happy about it, Adam.
This feels like we've been talking every Tuesday or Wednesday for forever.
It does feel like it is quite alarming to me or surprising to me that we have just passed round 6. It feels like we've rattled this off quite quickly, which, I mean, that's fairly par for the course at the end of April, but I don't know. It just feels quite, hot and heavy.
Yeah, and then another back-to-back coming. I hope the weather stays kind for Agida, because that round could either be sizzling or it can be absolutely swampy, as we saw last year. And then Lugo as well, without Jorge Prado in play. I want to see what that kind of event is like and the crowd turnout. I mean, of course, Ruben Fernandez is from the same area, so there's still plenty for local fans to root for. Good tash, by the way, Ruben. Keep it up. But yeah, that's there's a couple more interesting events, and obviously a good 10 days for the teams to be sort of roaming the Iberian Peninsula.
I did just realise that we didn't clarify that Maxime Renault was cleared of any significant injuries from his second moto crash. I think his status is still questionable moving forward, because he has had a horrid time of it since Argentina, with countless injuries, knocks and crashes, and I think his body is worse for wear. So I still wouldn't be surprised if he takes some time off, because he is out of this championship fight fully. But at least he didn't break any bones or anything like that. But still, this has gone off the rails in a horrendous way. In fact, I bet if you look through history and try to find a rider who won the first GP and then just basically turned to dust, I don't think you'd find an example like this. It's quite unique. Anyway, thank you for turning up, Adam, and thank you for carrying this podcast, because I have to say, this has maybe been my worst performance ever on a podcast.
No, I disagree. I think we've both been a bit stuttery, but otherwise it's been three in a row, Lewis. It's we need to sort of just take a breath, get the energy back for MXGP. Want to actually sit down and sort of see the next episode of racing rather than it feeling like an obligation.
I need to be better. This was bad. I'm not happy. I'm really pissed off.
Look, no, we had good talks about Ben Watson and Jeffrey Hurlings.
We did talk about Ben Watson. Well, yeah, then now
we were able to revisit Simon Längenfelder. I think there was some.
There was the insane take I had on Hurlings, which now I look like an idiot as well. And there's not even a podcast next week for me to redeem myself.
Yeah, but what if Hurlings wins the next GP? Then you're redeemed straight away.
Well, I don't know, because he'll still be like 200 points down. And if Gajser's there, then it's irrelevant. So we'll see. It's part of the fun of racing. You never know what's around the corner. Maybe.
Well, you were kind enough to call me an esteemed author at the beginning of the show, so I'm here to raise your esteem and say don't be too hard on yourself, because there was some good discussion points.
It's bad. 0 out of 10 for this podcast on my behalf. So thank you everyone for watching and listening and putting up with me on this episode. All I can say is the next time bigger, better, and another B word, which escapes me because I'm just not on form. It still
More
escapes
bravado.
me. But there we go. See, this is why Adam's here, to carry the show. Thanks for watching and listening. A weekend off for MXGP, as we said, but we will be back in 2 weeks' time to discuss all that happened at the Grand Prix of Portugal. So we will see you then.